So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. So this year, AWS made massive infrastructure investment in the Middle East as part of its top strategic initiatives globally. Expansion helps companies in our region to build web applications that are simply faster and more secure. So if you are hosting your web application on AWS or planning to, and you are either using a third-party content delivery network or none at all, this webinar will be useful for you. So in this webinar, I will first introduce the notion of native web delivery on AWS and explain why customers move to this approach from other approaches and more traditional ones. Then I will share some tips on how to migrate to native web delivery on AWS in a safe way, in a controlled way, before handing the mic to my guest, Ismail from Dubai Media. So Ismail will share his experience in migrating to AWS web delivery earlier this year. And if you have questions, meanwhile, please ask them in the chat. Someone from the team will answer. And at the end, I'll pick some of them and answer them for all of the audience. And maybe we will have like a Q&A. My name is Ashraf Souk. It's been 7 years since I was working with AWS. I'm a principal solutions architect. I'm based in Dubai since 2 years. Before, I was based in France. I'm part of the Edge Services Specialist team. So the mission of this team is to help customers to deliver a fast and secure digital experience that keeps users coming back. So on a day-to-day basis, we have conversations with customers on the topics that you're seeing here in the word cloud. Okay, so for example, how can I improve the performance of my website to have a better SEO ranking and a better user experience? How can I protect the availability of my website against distributed DDoS attacks? Yeah. How can I, stop malicious actors from abusing my login endpoints and stealing credentials of legitimate users? Or, I have my bill for delivering content on AWS is that much, and I would like to optimize it. I would like to reduce it. What can I do? So if you have those kind of topics in mind, please reach out to us after this webinar or ask your questions regarding these topics during the webinar. So what is the native way to deliver and secure web applications on AWS? The foundational service for this is Amazon CloudFront. It is AWS's native content delivery network. It's a global service, so it's not dependent on a specific AWS region, which means that is an awesome service to use for a highly available application, and especially if you're implementing multi-region architectures. So Amazon CloudFront will allow you to do that. And most importantly, it was built with the on-demand cloud vision, right? So this was the first innovation of CloudFront when it entered the market more than 15 years ago. Basically, at that time, CDNs were services that required a long sales cycle to acquire, right? It needed discussions with procurement cycles with providers, manual configurations, and so on. And Amazon CloudFront was the first CDN that was a self-service CDN. So it means anyone with a credit card and enough, money on it to go and be able to egress and to deliver hundreds of gigabits per second worldwide, right? So that was the first innovation and the vision of CloudFront. And today, when you speak with AWS solutions architects, they will recommend you to use and make CloudFront part of your web applications because it will make it well architected. So let's see how it works. First, imagine that you have like a web application that is hosted on AWS in one of those regions, and you're not using CloudFront to deliver the application to your users, right? So your users has to go through multiple, the request from your users and the content back to them has to go through multiple network hops through different ISPs before reaching the AWS region. Okay. So first, it means that there is additional latency, right? Because there are more hubs that needs to be traversed. But most importantly, is that on every additional hub presents a risk of something going wrong, right? A device failure, a network failure, BGP, let's say leaks, and sometimes it's political events, which are things that we quite know here in our region, right? And in addition, it gives malicious actors more opportunities to attack the application. Sorry, I'm hearing some. Just mute one of the audience. Please, Abdul, if you can mute yourself. Thank you very much. All right. So, what and how we deal with that in a cloud native web delivery on AWS. So the idea is that you extend the AWS cloud, closer to users thanks to the global network of CloudFront, right? So users will send a request, and the request will be received by the nearest point of presence of CloudFront. Usually, it's within tens of milliseconds from the major population centers in the world. And you can consider CloudFront as like a globally distributed reverse proxy to your applications, right? Once the request is received by CloudFront, it will be sent back to your application through the AWS backbone that we'll talk about in the future slides. And then on CloudFront, you start activate the features that you care about, right? So for example, for the static content, right, typical static assets, images, and so on, you will activate caching, you will add compressions, maybe you will be offloading some of the functionalities from your origin to the edge, and we'll talk about edge functions later on. Most importantly, you will be implementing different security controls on the edge, right? And mainly through AWS WAF, for example, to manage DDoS attacks, account takeover threats, manage bot traffic, and be protected against novel CVEs. Okay, and why this is important to be done at the edge is because sometimes it's too late to do it on the origin. If you do it on the origin, it means that you have, for example, for DDoS attacks, you have to scale your origin to absorb it, to block it. And in many cases, it's too late, right? Your application will be down. And then, as I mentioned before, CloudFront can be used as a routing service. So it allows you to route traffic to your application differently, different parts of your applications. For example, you want to route your static content to an S3 bucket, your APIs, maybe to API gateway endpoints, and maybe the HTML, you're still hosting it on-prem, and you want to route it directly to your servers on premises, right? So you can implement this kind of load balancing directly on CloudFront. And we see also when customers are using CloudFront behind like microservices, is that they use CloudFront with the edge functions capabilities to implement what some customers call middleware, right? So instead of implementing the same logic on every one of their microservices, they can offload them to a single layer at the entry point of the application. Typically, like we want to do like some A/B testing, some HTTP redirection, authorizations, and things like that. And finally, at this layer, you can create integrations with technology vendors that are partners with AWS and are available in the AWS marketplace. So typically for customers who, for example, either want to apply logic at the edge, for example, for security purposes, let's say API security or bot management, or sometimes I've seen customers that they don't have the control on the application. It's a legacy application. They cannot change it. So they prefer to implement it in a place where they have more control. And as I mentioned, it's not only for origins that are hosted in AWS, but also that applies for origins that are hosted on-prem in your own data centers. So I mentioned the global network of CloudFront. We're talking about hundreds of points of presence. We crossed the 600 point of presence this year in many countries and cities. What is important about this is that it is hosted and in a network that's completely managed by AWS. It means when the request of your users are processed by CloudFront point of presence, for example, in the Middle East. So if the response, is served from cache, right, or from local edge computing, that's fine. If it needs to go back to the origin, whether it's in the Middle East or in Europe or in US, it will go on the private network of AWS, right? It's a private network that is managed by AWS in general, based on 400 gig connectivity with a lot of redundancy. For example, recently we announced the Qatar POP in Doha, like it was on Monday, and this POP is connected to Bahrain through uh, the private network of AWS, but also to Singapore and to Milan. So if something goes wrong, either way, the POP is still connected, and your application can be served with great performance. And also it makes the application not only like faster, but also more resilient against anything going on the internet, because now for malicious actors, their opportunity to attack your application got reduced a lot, right? So this is why CloudFront is one of the services that we recommend our customers to be well architected. At this scale, we collect a lot of interesting stuff, different logs, interactions with let's say, malicious actors, DDoS attacks, and it allows us to generate threat intelligence that is unprecedented and deter attackers. And I will talk about it later on. So I started this talk about the Middle East. When I joined AWS in 2017, we didn't have any presence yet, and then slowly we started rolling out points of presence in the Middle East, with the UAE, the first country, 2018. Then Bahrain followed with the region as well in Bahrain. Then in 2022, we launched Oman, and this year is the big year for the expansion of CloudFront and the infrastructure of AWS in the Middle East. So we started with Turkey, major launch early this year, then Egypt with 2 points of presence, Qatar, where we went this week to make the announcement, and we are expecting a major announcement in a major population center in the Arab world to be shared publicly by the end of the year. So stay tuned for this. So what does it mean for populations living in our world, right? The first thing is that they will benefit from a better access to global, international, I would say, applications that are already using AWS, such as Booking.com, Snapchat and TikTok, and all of these applications, they are using AWS. And by doing this expansion, it means our population in the Middle East will benefit from a better experience, digital experience. But also for customers that are based in the Middle East, it means that they will be able to better serve their users using the AWS services. But also, if they want to expand in the future to geographies outside of the Middle East, it means that they will be able to use the same services to serve them locally and internationally. So I mentioned edge functions in the previous slide. I mentioned AWS WAF, so I just want to explain them very quickly before moving on. So edge functions is another example of the innovation that brought by AWS and CloudFront to the market, where at that time when we launched the first edge platform, which is Lambda@Edge, what we noticed is that customers want to customize the way content is delivered to users, right? And they want basically to program their CDNs. And CDNs provide this capability, right? However, the way they provide it is not necessarily developer friendly, right? So you either need to learn some basically some language specific to the CDN, like you want to learn Varnish, or there's a specific XML language that you need to learn, which makes the this possibility to program the CDN is very limited, because not all of your employees will be able to do that, right? To solve this challenge, Clarfront started with Lambda at Edge, which is based on Lambda, the very popular serverless function, I would say. And the idea is to allow customers, any developer who knows either JavaScript, so Node.js, JavaScript, or Python, to be able to program the CloudFront and customize the way it interacts with requests and responses. So the first Edge platform that we released at the time was Lambda at Edge. It is very powerful, as I mentioned, based on Lambda, uses the container capability of Lambda, right? Which means customers can use it to actually generate and render pages or generate images if they want, right? But then a few years ago, we released another Edge function platform, which is more tailored towards simple operations that are required to operate at a high scale, right? So typical HTTP manipulations, redirections, validations, and URL rewriting, things like that, which would scale seamlessly with CloudFront. And in terms of pricing, it's more cost efficient than Lambda at Edge. So some use cases from customers I worked with, to give you an example of how they are used. So the first one is Ryanair, who actually used one of the Edge platforms, two Edge function platforms, to actually integrate with their feature flag provider, which is launched darkly. And in this case, it's not because they cannot, they have like a legacy origin that does not allow them to do the integration. It's just simply because their origin was S3 and they were like serving single page applications, right? So they didn't have the possibility to do such integration with S3. So they use CloudFront and Lambda attached to do that. Then the other use case is Zalando, who actually migrated their image optimization workload to AWS. And one of their requirements was to be able to do some detection, automatic detection of the capabilities of the device, to know which version of the image to serve, which format to serve. Does this device support WebP, for example? I will serve WebP, right? And they use Clarfront functions for that. The other one is is OutSystems. They implemented a so this is a SaaS, a no-code SaaS platform. So they have like different tenants, and they are hosted in different, I would say, servers, clusters of servers. So what they needed is instead of them building a central routing layer, right, which they need to manage, which will become a potential bottleneck for them, they actually use CloudFront with the Edge functions to do this routing automatically based on attributes of the user. And finally, this is a well-known beverage company who actually built a completely serverless, a completely originless QR code, like URL shortener capability using CloudFront. And the idea here is like when you go to their to like any supermarket and scan the QR code and their bottles, you will be redirected to the most custom landing page based on the location of the user, and if there is like any campaign going on to be included in the page. So that's it for the Edge function part. Now let's talk about WAF. So as I mentioned to you, CloudFront can be used with either origins on AWS or on-prem, right? And WAF is a service that can be associated with your CloudFront distribution. So the distribution is the building block of using CloudFront for your web applications. Now, the interesting thing is WAF is not only available in CloudFront. So if you have like application, let's say on private VPC, like subnets, right, within your VPC, or like you're using other services to expose your web application. Let's say you're using AppSync or so, you can still use the same construct, the same service with those different services. Okay, so when a request is received by one of these services, so like for example by CloudFront, it's CloudFront that is going to terminate the TCP TLS like connection and session, and it will forward a copy of that request to WAF, which in the case of CloudFront is running in the same in another process in the same host on the global edge network of CloudFront, right? And then WAF will start evaluating the rules one by one, right? Until one of them is matching. So WAF allows you, like gives you a very flexible language to identify, like to kind of build conditions and matching rules. And once a rule has matched, you can define the action. You want to block it, you want to rate limit it, you want to send a challenge, a CAPTCHA, you want to send it, to allow it, send it upstream. You want to send the signal upstream, right? Or maybe you want to send return a custom response to users. All right. So a couple of just an example of threat modeling that WAF can help you with, right? It's not at all exhaustive of what are the capabilities of WAF. It's just a diverse way to give you an idea of what can be done. So those are like four threats that AWS can help you manage on the edge layer. Of course, always remember that managing security threats needs to be done in multiple layers, right? So and AWS WAF is just one of those layers that are provided by AWS. Always think about defense in depth. Okay, so the first one is DDoS attacks, right? So attackers that are trying to overwhelm your application to make it unavailable for users, legitimate users. And this can, I mean, the reason and the motivation can range from a company to another. Sometimes it's for competitive reasons. Sometimes it's state-sponsored. And I've been in situations where I've seen very funny scenarios. Like once in a discovery, let's say of our company, there's a small girl who joined the company to discover AWS, and I was explaining to her about DDoS, and she told me like, I know about DDoS because she DDoSed the website of her school, so her parents do not see basically her grades, right? We also see that in specific industries. For example, in the gaming industry, we see users DDoSing gaming servers if they are like close to losing or so, and they don't want to kind of jeopardize their points. Historically, for DDoS attacks, we were used to attackers sending volumetric attacks at layers 3, layer 4, floods, reflection attacks, or like more, I would say, attacks targeting protocols or TCP, such as thin floods, right? However, clouds, and specifically AWS cloud, became very, very efficient against these attacks because it has the scale, especially with CloudFront, and it built a lot of mitigation against it. So we have seen in the recent years attackers moving from layer 3, layer 4 DDoS attacks to more towards layer 7 DDoS attacks, so specifically HTTP floods, with the most advanced one being sent from bot networks, right? And this is why, like in the recent years, also AWS has evolved its security in the cloud to deal better with layer 7 DDoS attacks. I'll talk a little bit about it later on, but also gave our customers more capabilities, for example, through bot control, rules in AWS WAF to deal with such threat. Then account takeover is a specific, I'd say, flavor of flooding, where we're flooding the login endpoint, and it's not about making it unavailable. It's even if sometimes it leads to making it unavailable, but it's more about actually stealing legitimate credentials. So basically, we put like a user an email, and we try different passwords until one of them matches, right? Or we try with a library of stolen credentials. And afterwards, once we gain access to those legitimate credentials, we can either sell them or we can go and use them in the website to conduct malicious activities. So, for example, in the past, I've seen malicious actors stealing loyalty points from customers and so on. And for that, AWS has multiple functionalities and services that can help you, including the account takeover prevention that is a rule that is available in part of the managed rule set on AWS WAF. The third one is GenAI costs. So as customers are moving more and more towards towards implementing and deploying GenAI endpoints in productions. So last year probably was the year of customers exploring and experimenting with. I'm starting to see more and more customers putting them in production. And for those Gen AI capabilities that are exposed publicly, whether it's completely anonymous way or through an authenticated experience, this is a major threat for customers that needs to be dealt with. And basically, the threat is a denial of wallet situation, because here the malicious actors are very incentivized to go and use your Gen AI compute power for a purpose that is not your purpose. For example, I am a malicious actor, and I discovered that in your retail website, let's say you have created a customer service chatbot. So what I will do, I will try my best to create like a proxy, right? That will discuss with your Gen AI input, with your chatbot, override its prompt, and actually sell it as a generic, let's say, Bedrock API, right? And here the financials of it are very, very appealing. So this is something customers needs to pay attention to, and I'm starting to see also customers asking us about it. And the last one is simply to be prepared for the next major CVE, impactful CVE that is discovered, right? For example, like the Log4j. So you want a tool that protects you the time that you update your fleet of servers, right? And this is something that you can do with AWS WAF through different managed rules, but also through rules that you can craft yourself. Okay, I would like to focus on two of them, the DDoS attacks and the Gen AI costs. On the DDoS protection, I would say topic, I mentioned in the previous slide about the scale of AWS and the amount of threat intelligence that we gather. Specifically, I'll give you some examples. We are seeing more than 1 million DDoS attacks per year, and we have deployed a massive network of honeypots on which we see hundreds of millions of daily interactions with malicious actors. Okay, and this is basically the strategy of AWS to move from being reactive to DDoS attacks to being more like offensive, right? And to give you an example, basically we use this threat intelligence to provide you like with rules in AWS based on this threat intelligence to block IPs based on their reputation, right? So for example, there's a DDoS focused one that is very effective against DDoS attacks. But also we kind of use this threat intelligence to go and bring down command and control centers. So we bring down the infrastructure of attackers before they attack our customers, either by working with data center hosting providers upstreams or with networks, to bring down any IPs or domains that are used for controlling botnets. And we work with government entities such as, like recently with the US government, to bring down known malicious actors like the Anonymous Sudan that went to the press recently. So this is on the threat intelligence. As you know, the security topic in the cloud is usually divided into two parts. One part is the security of the cloud. This is our part of the responsibility model. And you can see a lot of like multiple names here. I'm going to spare you the details, but those are systems behind the scenes that are working to protect the majority of our customers, right? We've been public about Blackwatch, which are our scrubbing systems, but we have released more and more capabilities, such as Vanguard, which is more focused on layer 7 DDoS attacks, as we see the trend going there. Most importantly, we give you the tools to enhance your security in the cloud. And for DDoS attacks, it's a range of using IP reputation list that is built on our threat intelligence, implementing different flavors of rate limits, implementing automatic DDoS detection and mitigation that is available through Shield Advanced. But we also we are expecting much more to come in this space, so stay tuned as well. And finally, if you need like help, let's say all of those automated systems did not work and you need help from experts in mitigating and blocking these DDoS attacks, you can reach out to the Shield Response team if you are subscribed to Shield Advanced. So the other threat that I would like to go a little bit more in details in it is like the Gen AI denial of wallet scenario. So the number that you're seeing here, which is $277, is basically the potential cost of Gen AI that you will be saving if you're investing $1 in bot control, which is the bot management capability of AWS WAF. This is from a session in Reinforce this year. It just gives you an idea about the scale, the economics of protecting your Gen AI endpoints, how much it's important, and if you don't do it, what it means for you in the bill at the end of the month. So a little bit more details how we do it. So there are layer techniques that we implement in bot control to protect you against bots that are trying to abuse your Gen AI compute power. Starting with bot signature that we see across our network. Then we implement challenges such as JavaScript challenge to make sure we have a browser that is interacting with our application, not like a simple curl that is running in a data center. In addition, we do some advanced client-side fingerprinting to see if we can detect any automation framework, Puppeteer, Selenium, and so on. They're trying to actually automate actions through a headless Chrome, for example. And then with this JavaScript challenge, we basically place a cookie for every session that allows us to analyze the behavior of a session. Okay, so is this session sending in an anomalous amount of traffic compared to the average session, right? Is it behaving in a way that shows that there is some coordinated activities across many sessions? So this is a detection that is done based on machine learning. And of course, we give you the possibility to use the homegrown AWS CAPTCHA as one of the techniques that you decide about to actually challenge more requests that have high signals of bots. All right, great. So now you have a great idea about like the native web delivery on AWS in the way it works with CloudFront, with the security controls, right? So I would like to share with you now why customers are actually moving their web delivery to a cloud native one. So there are three main reasons. Basically, it's about cost saving, it's about the scale of the cloud, and it's about the developer experience. And I will go a little bit more into the details of each one of them. So from cost saving perspective, what is different about the native delivery on AWS compared to market alternatives is that you are acquiring and using the same service for different use cases. So if you have like a web application that includes API, so dynamic traffic, it includes some downloads, like large downloads, it includes web, like full web delivery, it includes media, it includes video streaming. All of them will be treated in the with the same product, so you don't need to buy specialized product for every different use case. So it's simpler overall for you to understand, but also it gives you a scale, economies of scale. Typically, what we see is, for example, for customers who have a mix of use cases, is that at the end, on the average parameters for doing the pricing it makes it very competitive. For example, typically, like we can see, for important volumes of traffic that includes images and video and so on. Typically, the API request on CloudFront will be included in the contract without additional cost. It's an on-demand pricing structure, and I would like you to focus well on this. Like any AWS service, right? The cost of usage scale with the actual usage. Okay, so the more you consume, the more you pay, right? Where what you would be seeing in the market is packages, right? So you have like package one, package two, package three. This package approach has its pros, right? In the beginning, when you are starting with the service, the package is quite easy to understand because you say, okay, you can use as much as you want, and this is the price that you'll pay by the end of the month. There are no surprises in it, and that's true. However, once your usage start requiring capabilities, features, or thresholds that are not covered by this first package that you got, the provider offering those packages will be very incentivized to go and push you to move to another package. And this move from a package to another is not a linear one. It will be like an exponential one, right? In terms of cost. So that won't be the case in AWS CloudFront and WAF. It's the same price, whether you are using it at a low level or at a high level. Okay, so they won't be surprised. But at the beginning, you need to do this pricing exercise to know how much it will cost you in the beginning. In terms of data transfer out, so data transfer out is basically the amount of bytes that you are egressing from AWS, right? And what we heard from our customers is that they want to use CDN and they want their data transfer out to be more optimal. And this is why we built a pricing model with CloudFront. Is when you use CloudFront, actually, your DTO cost will automatically be lowered down. So the DTO from CloudFront is lower than the DTO if you're doing it directly from the region, and that leads to like a great quote, I would say, that I heard this week from a customer. So Sununu in Qatar, they were presenting in the top launch in Qatar, and so they were saying that in general, when you are doing technical decisions, most of the time you have to choose between performance and cost. They tend to be in contradiction. And CloudFront allows you actually to have both of them, right? So in the same time, you will improve your delivery on AWS, the speed of delivery on AWS, but at the same time, they have a lower cost. And this is why this is what we heard from customers. This is how we built the pricing model of it. In terms of security solutions, what we've seen through different migrations is that basically there's like the WAF offering is quite competitive, and typically we've seen customers like reducing their security cost by 50%, 60% when they're moving to AWS native delivery. Final two points is the cloud economics that you're benefiting from. So of course you will have like private pricing if you have more than 10 terabyte per month that you're egressing. But if you are at a level where you have like an enterprise discount agreements with AWS, those discounts will also in addition will apply to CloudFront, and the cost the cost of CloudFront will contribute to your discount agreements with AWS. And of course, the fact that you have like a more consolidated vendors in your delivery. So in terms of cloud scale, I think what is very important to mention here is the reliability of AWS services, so CloudFront and WAF. It has a track record in the recent years where in our industry we have been seeing every year major CDN outages basically across the industry. It doesn't mean that this will not happen to us, because we believe that things fail all the time. But we have acquired a lot of expertise and experience in building large-scale, reliable systems, right? That we use this experience in our different services, including in CloudFront. The other thing is this long-term viability of the provider that you would like to select. Again, in our industry, we've seen in the last years some consolidation of providers. So some providers that were here that are not here anymore, such as Lumen, who sold their CDN activities, and Edge.io, who filed bankruptcy very recently. So this is an important factor for you, for customers when they want to select their web delivery, which is, okay, I would like to work with a provider that I know that they will be there in 2 years and 3 years and 5 years. We talked previously about the global network and the threat intelligence, so I'm gonna pass it. In terms of developer experience, again, we talked about how we made content delivery programmable using like very known languages such as JavaScript, right? Which was not something that's available in industry, but the good thing is that the industry overall are catching up with the different workers flavors across the industry. Also, since the start, with the vision of CloudFront being self-service CDN, it is available, to be deployed in a safe way using infrastructure as a code. Again, here this industry has caught up, but not for everything. So you might see the possibility for deploying, for example, using Terraform, some third-party CDNs, but you will not be able to deploy everything. So there will be still some capabilities that are not deployable as a code, and this is really important. I remember working with the customer in France before I came to Dubai. So they are a big media company. Actually, I can mention the name, M6, and they actually moved from third-party CDN to CloudFront for multiple reasons. One of the main reasons is for them that they will not use any CDN that they cannot deploy as a code. So, and even they put a pressure on us. Like sometimes we release a feature on CloudFront, it takes a few weeks, to make it available as infrastructure as a code. And they tell us, like, if it's not available in CloudFormation or Terraform, it's not available for us, and that's it. And of course, you will be benefiting from the same cloud tooling in AWS that you use for all other services, for example, CloudTrail to audit, API activities, We talked about CloudFormation for deployment, but so many other things like observability in CloudWatch, permissions, managing permissions in IAM, and so on. And I guess that is something really interesting here that we're working more and more, and you will hear more announcement by the end of the year around it, is that we want to make it easy for customers to keep their origins private on AWS while exposing it through CloudFront, right? So that was the case for S3, and we, through historically origin access identities, but we evolved it to origin access control for a more modern way of doing it. We made it also available for Lambda URLs, for example, and we are looking to make it available for other types of AWS origins. And the idea is here customers and developers it will be very easy for them to basically use AWS origins in a private way without having to build a lot of security controls around it. So it will be the most native way to expose applications publicly on the internet. All right, so let me wrap up this sections with some myths that I kept hearing from sometimes customers, sometimes prospects, sometimes even from AWS colleagues internally, that I want to make sure that you have full understanding of it. So the first one is that CloudFront is a CDN for delivering static content on from S3. That was true. That was true when it was launched like 15 years ago. But since then, it has evolved a lot. And as you saw, CloudFront can deliver your static, your dynamic traffic, whether in S3, whether somewhere else on AWS or on your on-prem, your own data centers. And actually, I've seen it as a I would say a pattern for some customers to start migrating their workloads to AWS using CloudFront, right? So that was the case of Booking.com, and they will be speaking about it in the reInvent this year. So they first started, they kind of migrated from their own like data center based load balancer to CloudFront as a routing mechanisms to their different data centers, and then they use CloudFront to start migrating their web applications one by one from on-prem to their to AWS with no impact on their end users. So the other one is CloudFront only works with AWS. We just mentioned it. It also works with on-prem. Actually, the origin that can be configured with CloudFront, this can be any origin that has a public domain name. So even if your origin is on Azure or on Google, we can still work with it. CloudFront is expensive. So this is typically for customers that will just read the public pricing of CloudFront on the pricing page, which is not the full reality. So when you are on the lower side of consumption, you actually benefit from a free tier on CloudFront. So you have 1 terabyte with, I think, 2 million requests per month that are free, and they are free every month, every year for the rest of our lives, right? So basically for customers with low consumption, they will most likely not pay anything. And for customers with higher consumption, we work with them on private pricing to kind of give them significant discounts, 60%, 70%, depends on the commitment they make. So the deal here is that they commit to use CloudFront for a certain amount during a certain period, and with that commitment, we kind of give them a more preferential prices. And the most common one is, hey, CloudFront, you don't have this feature X or feature Y, okay? And sometimes, like, I see three I would say, scenarios where I hear it from customers. The first one is that they actually use a feature with a CDN that is not needed in CloudFront, right? So, for example, CDNs that do not have their own network, they propose to their customers features to basically route away from issues on the internet, right? So route away from congestions and so on. Well, in CloudFront, of course, does not have this feature because AWS Amazon CloudFront is built on the network of AWS as private network, so it's by default it's routed on the best network path. Yep. The other one is uh, uh, some features are available in AWS, not necessarily part of CloudFront. It's not necessarily a feature of CloudFront, right? So, for example, yeah, CloudFront does not have like a real user monitoring capability. Yes, but AWS has, right? And it is called Cloud Assurance. So you need to look at the big picture of AWS to make sure that your feature is available and you can use it. And last case is sometimes, yes, we do not have a native feature. Typically, like CloudFront does not have a native image optimization feature, but customers can build it using AWS building blocks, right? And we provide them with like solutions as a starting point for them to do that. So, for example, for image optimization, I personally worked on a solution that is available, that's public, that is based on Lambda and S3 basically to do the image compressions automatically. It's true, or we have to be honest. It's true that in this approach, customers will need an initial investment to make it work for them, right? But once they do, the solution is very customized to the workload, leading in general to better performance and in general to better cost. All right. So you have an idea about now the native web delivery of on AWS using CloudFront, using AWS WAF. You understand what are the benefits and why customers do it, why they move to this approach on AWS. You're convinced you want to do the same. So now it's about actually doing the migration, right? Whether you are not using any CDN at all, or you are using a content delivery from third-party one. So what we tell our customers is that the most important part of it is actually the preparation. Okay, the initial planning step. It's 90% of the work. Okay, so let's see how it works. So first, you need, like, this is specifically for big companies with a lot of different domains that require migration. So first, you need to kind of do the inventory of those domains to migrate, and then categorize them into different level of complexity, right? So, for example, simple ones is a static website, basic caching configuration. Medium one is some dynamic pages with some edge function logic that is required, and more complex is login that require advanced security controls such as the account takeover preventions that requires client-side integration, JavaScript integrations, SDK, and so on. And then the idea is here you document the target design. So where do you want to land at the end? How you want your end design you would like it to look like, okay? So let's look at the target design. For you, when you do this exercise, it's really, really important to use this opportunity to review legacy configuration, sorry. So you don't need to move exactly things as they are, right? And most of the time what I notice is that with customers, they have like hundreds of lines of previous configurations that are not used anymore, or they were done by someone who left the company and no one knows what they do, right? So it's important to take this opportunity to kind of clean up a little bit your configuration and work backwards from your own needs. For example, HTTP2 had a feature called HTTP push that was popular at some point, and it has been deprecated since for multiple reasons. So do you still need it, right? Then make sure that you understand the mental model of AWS native content delivery to be able to make the right design on AWS. And I gave you a taste of it in the beginning, but I will share with you later on some more resources about it. Then you need to do the feature mapping. So the main features that you care about, how you kind of implement them on AWS. I will give you an example about it. And even for features that you don't have, maybe you can speak with AWS team or look at the latest and benefit from technologies that you don't actually, you're not implementing. For example, maybe you're not implementing HTTP 3 and the latest version of HTTP, and you want to actually benefit from it. So let's see an example design, okay? We will look at the different components of the web application. So this is a simple web application, and we'll be mapping it into CloudFront, right? So images, they are identified by /images like wildcard. This is how we will configure the pattern in CloudFront, and where you'll be forcing a 1 year of caching, with including the query strings that define the different sizes of the image, right? Because every size should be cached differently. And here you need the image transformation feature. So for this, you can use the self-managed AWS optimization solution that I just described in the previous slide. Then for your, let's say, CSS JavaScript, you identify those files through the extension .css.js. You will also force 1 year of caching, and actually you will be using versioning on the backend side to actually invalidate the file when there's a new version of it, right? So just changing the naming of it. Both of them, like images and JavaScript CSS, are stored on Nest as an origin, okay? Here you would require compression. You would like to compress those text-based files, and here you can do it natively in CloudFront using Brotli and gzip. For your APIs that are identified through API/wildcard path pattern, here you are disabling caching completely. You just want to use CloudFront as a reverse proxy. The origin here is API gateway in different regions. It's not a single region, and you have multiple requirements. Okay, so for bot management, right? So you'll be using AWS WAF bot control, right? Plus some client-side integration on the front end. As I mentioned, the intelligent routing is important for you to make the API fast. In this case, you don't need to do anything. It's native in using the AWS Global Network. And you have been using a specialized API security that does very advanced thing for them. They are very known for what they do, and you still want to use them. So in this case, what you can do is that you can acquire them from the AWS marketplace, so simplified procurement procedure, and you can integrate with them through Lambda attach. So every time a CloudFront receives the request, it gives the copy to this vendor for evaluation, and then it will apply the result, whether like block or so. And finally, the HTML. Here, like, it's basically for all the rest of the files. You're just caching for 1 minute. It's still very useful. Here, the origin is a AKS cluster on AWS. And for HTML, you need to implement multiple things. So you need to implement HTTP redirections. For this, you use scripts based on CloudFront functions, and actually you store the redirections in a distributed table that works well with CloudFront functions called key value store. So it's distributed on all of our edge network. For DDoS protection, you implement a mix of rules, right? You'll use IP lists, rate limits, plus you will be benefiting from, like, you decided to implement shield attacks. And finally, for the baseline protection against novel CVEs, such as Log4j, you will be using the WAF core rule set, but also you can use other core rule sets from other vendors that are available with AWS WAF. If you want to learn more about those different use cases, I will stop for 1 second and let you scan this QR code. This is a library of articles that talks about, like short articles, talks about those use cases, and it helps you better design, create target designs on AWS for your migrations. This is a portal that I am with my team maintaining on a regular basis to make sure that you have the latest information for you. Okay, great. If now you have the target design, there are a couple of things that you need to manage, right? You need to manage some of the risks and challenges, right, before the migration. For example, AWS account quotas, right? You want to make sure that, for example, if you have a lot of CloudFront distributions, you need to kind of raise this limit beforehand to avoid failure during the migration. And you have to look at different other constraints, right? Some technical ones. For example, if you want to migrate the Apex domain to CloudFront, you need to use Route 33, right? So there are solutions if you don't, right? So this is something that we can discuss. Deadlines, if there's a freeze, there's some Friday sales event or something else, or you have the renewal of your current CDN provider. So this is very important. Pay attention to that, because sometimes this can lead to the failure of the migration, because we didn't do it at the right time, and now we're stuck with our CDN provider for the next year or 2 years, depending on your contract. And finally, for the resources, right? Okay, do I have the skills or the capacity to do that, or do I need help from AWS or from partners? And I would like to talk about that. So we have a very large network of partners that can help you with either like the migration itself, or the post-migration, maintaining your web delivery, I would say, configuration. For example, the WAF rules and so on. We have different programs to kind of maintain their skills. For example, there are competencies and certifications, such as a CloudFront delivery certifications that they go through. And I would like to highlight two of our partners in the regions in the Middle East. So the first one is Soufflé, who are based in Turkey, and have offices in Istanbul and in Dubai. We have worked with them, have multiple case studies with them, such as working delivering educational content for Doping Hafiza in Turkey. So this is like online classroom, if I'm not wrong. And they have quite a competitive pricing for their services. The other one is a company that is based in France, Trackit. They have international experience, a lot of experience in the US. And the interesting thing is that they are also available in the AWS marketplace, so you can acquire their services directly from the AWS marketplace, which makes your procurement experience faster. If you are interested in any of them, those are the QR codes that allows you to contact them, and I'm happy to put you in touch with them if you need. So a quick focus on Soufflé. So these partners, they have like packages that can help you with the migration. So for example, Soufflé have this CDN migration package where they will help you in collecting the requirements, going through the migration plan, doing the implementation, support during the migration, and after it, like handoff and documentation. And even if you need support post-migration, they can do it. They can do it also for the security aspects of it. For example, working with you on the WAF rules, tuning them, working, reducing false positives, and so on. And for the more advanced threat, I would say security protections, where there is a requirement for doing integration on the client side and so on. They will help you through the advanced threat detection. And if you are a company with a very, I would say, a lot of organization, a lot of teams, and you want to implement a security governance, they have like a package as well for that. So let me end here before moving to our case study with Dubai Media. So on the execution itself, right? So make sure you define the ownership, who's doing what, yourself, the partner, and so on. Give them the right permissions in advance, the IAM permissions to be able to make the changes in your accounts. Define the timelines to avoid hitting any renewal dates. It's very important to enable observability that will allow you to take action, corrective action, very fast during the migration. So whether it's like metrics in CloudWatch, or the logs of CloudFront or WAF that can be sent to different locations, depends on what is your preferred location, S3 bucket, OpenSearch, and so on. And super important, you learn from Dubai Media how to reduce the blast radius of the migration. Of course, reducing the DNS, TTL upfront, to be able to do rollbacks very quickly and do a phased migration, right? So do not like migrate everything in this right way, do it progressively and make sure during this progressive migration to detect any issue and deal with it. And finally, migrate. So if you would like more resources on this topic, I shared with you two links. One is a blog, and the other one is a talk at reInvent when we go more into details about how to conduct a migration in a very safe and controlled way. So I would like to hand the mic now for Ismail, who I'm very honored to have worked with this year. And actually, I have worked with Ismail in previous company almost 10 years ago, so it dates back. He will tell us about his experience in migrating their web property news property to CloudFront. Ismail.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everybody. My name is Ismail. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. My journey actually in digital media started many years ago in Hong Kong. I joined the Dubai Media in 2009, supported that mostly launched from their new one property. And making it part of my career here in Dubai. Today, I lead the web development in DevOps in Dubai Media, or guiding the talented through digital projects like algorithm migration to the AWS native web delivery. Next, please. I'm looking connected to Dubai Media. Dubai Media is one of the largest media organizations in the Middle East. Dubai Media is more than just news. It's a cultural body. We create original content across things, radio, television. We teach the Holy Quran. We basically create original content across all of these channels. This year we launched the Dubai Studio, world-class production facility, and after Dubai Media Academy, dedicated in India competition in the world and beyond. This initiative as part of our mission to push boundaries and deliver content that connects, inspire, and engage with. Next, please. Question is obviously maybe big on everybody's mind. Why move to AWS? I want you to imagine with me a calm evening with your family, and suddenly an alarm go off. Your main flagship website has gone down. Basically, you discover that there is a relentless DDoS assault is flooding our server with 43,000 over 43,000 hits per second. Call coming left and right, alert flashing on the mobile screen, and panic of things setting. Our origin server were overwhelmed. Our team was scrambling to respond. New kind of team powerless after what our defense club. Our valiant DevOps warriors worked tirelessly, of course, to produce rely on their skill and experience, years of experience, what any time to mitigate this when we are working on the but it was clear for us. The infrastructure could not handle that. We have seen this one many times, repeated again with our CDN at the time on the development of much. So this was another wake-up call. We needed a solution that could scale under pressure, something that is resilient, and that is cloud native. So that's the point here. We've done moving to the cloud. We have all of the different systems that we trying to handle different things that we have to deal with. It was really a challenge for us. Next slide, please. Obviously, moving to a new CDN can be a challenge, but with AWS Cloud Front, it felt like upgrading from a congested, truly congested road trip to a high-speed full link. I don't know if that maybe sound, so that can sound accurate for us. We began obviously with the POC pilot test. We started with the formula to identify either potential issue very early on. Each thing we went through were carefully planned because we wanted to make sure that again we have so many legacy system, legacy backends that we have to migrate in to managing the development, the system admin, and all of this that has to be working together. And we have to execute properly. We don't have a lot of time to basically go through this. Which means this phased approach did ensure stability and allowed us to resolve all of the issues quickly as we sort of discovered them. By the time we moved to our critical property, we were actually fully prepared, making the migration as seamless as successful experience for both our audience, but also for our team. Next, please. Obviously, every migration had a challenge. Ours was no exception. We have to mention we have many legacy systems. A legacy system that has been developed a long time ago, and it was actually they all put a unique challenge and have their own issues. Some, for example, was actually the cache control and the cache ratio were not very performing as we want. It required sort of careful optimization and sort of to optimize performance. So we, as I mentioned, try different software and not may have got some. For instance, we had to find for cache key setting into cache and really unexpectedly we can see due to the legacy walls again. That is little legacy origin we have. But fortunately for us, AWS Edge capability, Edge function provided we are out with the flexibility to handle these issues with little or no change to our backend. The flexibility was invaluable for us, providing the control we needed to overcome this challenge and keep the migration on track. Next, please. One of the most exciting outcomes for me personally, being with migrating, was a new use case that was enabled by the AWS Cloud Edge function. We had been our ad sales and advertisers were basically looking to optimize their ad performance, and we needed to have a third-party sort of solution, third-party taking to work to be able to personalize and optimize the ad experience to our audience. This allowed us to serve targeted ads that will use the location and a unique ID, enhancing obviously the relative content of this ad without modifying anything on our audience. Which I think was a very critical step. Additionally, we are currently rolling out an implementation of image optimization within another issue we faced previously. Because we are a news organization, we publish a lot of content on a daily basis, and some of this content could be both media could be very large. And this service implementation will be done directly on the cloud, on the edge. This enhancement obviously has opened doors for innovation, delivering faster, more personalized experience for our users. Last weekly is the result of our migration. What has been very outstanding. We both moving to cloud front. We see our response time, our server response time, basically as measured by Google, dropping from an average of 427 milliseconds to just 162. That for us is a huge step because I'm sure probably somebody of you are used to know the impact that could have on the field. We actually, one of our key publications has authority score climbing very fast within a matter of just a few months. Before migration, we were at 39, for example. And last month we hit 42, and that's almost 4-point jump. That usually doesn't happen overnight. It takes years of actually optimization after the get above. Furthermore, we see the migration where allowed us to save a lot of cost. I mean, we achieved a substantial cost saving by cutting our cost by over 50% compared to the previous provider. This migration has not only improved our performance, but also transformed our digital column. So we are very excited about the road ahead, and we are looking to remove as much of the for the possibility of AWS cloud for as we move forward. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ismail. Thank you for sharing your testimony with us. So let's wrap up the webinar. So before some next steps, before that, if I would ask you to just fill this survey, it's important for us. While you do that, again, I would like to thank you for attending this webinar. So as a next step, if you have any of these topics that you would like to discuss further, please let us know. I will share my contact later on in the next slide. We will be happy to help you think about the whatever problem that you have. We'd be happy to support you, whether through the skills, through partners, or through funding POCs, right? So again, my name is Ashraf Souq. This is my email where you can contact me. But also, if you would like to stay updated about these topics, what's going on AWS for everything related to native web delivery, cybersecurity, like edge security, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I kind of regularly post educational material about it. So thank you very much. We ran a little bit more than supposed to on the time. We still have 6 minutes to take questions. Please, if you have any question, we'll wait for a few minutes. If you have any question, raise your hand. I'll unmute you, and then you can ask your question.
Hi, Ashraf. Thank you, Ashraf and Ismail, for the very informative session. I appreciate that. You were talking about how CloudFront is not meant only to serve the static content, but in the same time, you said that it's also help with dynamic traffic. If we are going to use CloudFront as an reverse proxy, how that's going to accelerate, for example, our API traffic? There is no cache at all in this case.
Okay, absolutely. So this is called dynamic acceleration, and the idea is that you will be accelerating API traffic on different levels. So the first level is using advanced and modern protocols between the user and the Cloudflare point of presence. For example, using HTTP 3 quick that reduces the establishment of TCP and TLS handshake basically to single round trip. And this round trip is only happening uh, on a few tens of milliseconds, right? Instead of going from the user towards to your backend somewhere like in the region, right? So that's one. And the second is that once once CloudFront opens connections with your origin, all the requests then kind of take a highway, right? So there's a lot of connection reuse from CloudFront to the origin, for example, to the load balancer. So you're reducing the overhead of establishing a new connection for every request every time, right? And that gives a significant improvement in latency. We've seen it with customers like Slack, like Tinder. All of them are customers who actually mentioned that publicly in reInvent just by putting Cloudfront in front of the APIs. They reduce the response times of their APIs. And this is why some of our native APIs in AWS actually kind of does it behind the scene. For example, if you're using API gateway and you select edge optimized endpoint behind the scene, it is using Cloudflare to actually accelerate the content.
Great. Thank you so much. Another question here that usually we hear it from our customers, especially when we deal with this kind of migration, is the SSL kind of management, because pretty much our competitors, or they are actually, or other vendors is handling this in a very less overhead operation. How that works with CloudFront in this case?
So you mean you're asking about, okay, if I'm serving HTTPS, like what's the latency of serving through HTTPS versus HTTP? Is that your question, Muhammad?
That's part of it, and other part is related to the SSL management, renewal and integration and so on.
I see. And thanks for representing our customers here in the call. Like SSL renewal is actually this is a good point, because this was another innovation of CloudFront. So in the industry, provisioning a SSL certificate took a lot of time, right? It was manual, required weeks, and you have to pay for it. And we heard from customers that it was a pain for them to kind of get started with a secure HTTPS endpoint, especially that this became the expectation for all traffic today. I mean, I don't see any HTTP traffic anymore, and you shouldn't, I would say. And so AWS made this easy through the integration with ACM, Amazon Certificate Manager. So basically, you can issue certificate without additional cost. So basically, it's for free if you're using AWS, and it will be issued through certificate authority that is managed by by AWS. Okay, so that's the first thing that we solved. And of course, behind the scene, we evolved our like infrastructure footprint to make sure that by default it dealt with HTTPS with minimal overhead, right? So for example, we there's like, I will not go dive into it, but there's like some hardware innovations to make sure HTTPS and TLS is done at lower level, at hardware level, to make it very fast. But also we maintain our own SSL library, like we call it S2N, and to make sure it is adapted to our infrastructure. It's just with less overhead, and most importantly, it is proven to be secure. So there won't be any security loopholes in it in the future.
Yeah, thanks
All
a
right.
lot.
All right, folks, thank you very much. We're at the end of the time. We consumed the full hour and a half. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you, Ismail, again for joining us and sharing your session. And again, this is my contact. If you have any need, any conversation that you would like to have with us, I would be more than happy to take it forward with you. Have a great day.